Thank you, Natasha. Really appreciate it. Shout out to Mike Capiello, District 75. Done great work around social emotional learning there. Shout out to some of our school social workers who are on the call, Ms. Marquette out of the Urban Assembly School for Performing Arts. Shout out to Natasha Green, who spent time, energy, and effort to bring all our school social workers together to recognize your excellence and to talk about what it means to lead and light the way. So happy School Social Worker Week, straight off the bat. Very excited to be here. I'm David Adams, CEO of the Urban Assembly. And just like Natasha said, she said, David, can you speak about social and emotional learning? Can you speak to our conference? I said, of course. And I was thinking about this the other day, and I said, what am I going to talk about? What does inspire me right now? And like a lot of you, I'm sure you guys have heard of the book, All I've Ever Known That's Important, I've Learned in Kindergarten, right? That's not something that you guys aren't familiar with. So I decided I'm going to title my presentation after a similar concept. It's called All I've Ever Known. And we're going to talk about some of the people who've inspired me from the field of school social work and how they have helped me learn about what it means to be a school social worker, particularly in the context of social and emotional development. So I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes and talk about all I've ever learned. So as I said before, we all seen this book. All I really know, all I really need to know, I learned in kindergarten. Things like how to share, how to pick up after ourselves, how to say please and thank you, uncommon thoughts and common things. It actually came out in 1986. Robert Fogelman was the author of that, and that inspired my talk today. And I'm going to translate this into some lessons that I've learned. There'll be 5 lessons that I've learned from the school social work field. But who have I learned them from? So this is Dr. Lawrence Farmer. He's been a mentor of mine for years. He mentored me back when I was an undergraduate at Rutgers University. I did graduate school at Fordham University and School of Education. He helped me out there. And so I'm going to dedicate this talk to him because he's actually a school social worker. And when I was wandering around in the education field saying, all I really want to do is social emotional learning, not finding a really good place, he said, come here, I'm going to adopt you into the school social work space. Come on, we'll talk at conferences, we'll do research together, we'll talk about the school social work space. And you can see here, we're in Australia in the bottom right. Here we're in New Mexico on the top left. And so all I've ever learned about the school social worker, I learned from Dr. Farmer. Some other stuff that we've done together, we published a paper on Resilient Scholars Program, Strengths, Special Needs Students, and Social Emotional Competencies. So we've spent a lot of time thinking about the evaluation of social emotional skills in the context of students with special needs. On the bottom right here, it says school performance and school climate, contextualizing social and emotional competencies. So we spent a lot of time doing research on the relationship between school culture, school climate, student social and emotional strength. So again, all I've ever really learned about, all I've ever really needed to learn about school social work, I learned from Dr. Lawrence. So what are some things that I learned? Well, the first thing I want to talk about is one time Dr. Farmer and I were at a school social work conference. It actually was a social work conference. And everybody was walking around and they had these little pins and it said macro matters. And I was like, Dr. Farmer, are they talking about calories? Or are they talking about, economics? What's the big deal there? And he said, there's a lot of emphasis on the micro development of our school social workers and our social workers in general, right? You've got licensure, you've got opportunities to do independent therapy. There's a lot of prestige that comes around the micro level. And he said sometimes our social workers who do the macro work don't feel like they get the love either. And so in this conversation, I watched all these school social workers and social workers more general walk around with a pin that said macro matters, right? And here at the Urban Assembly, we tried to envision and embody that notion. School social workers at the Urban Assembly help lead the SEL team, developing and implementing universal inputs for the social emotional development of staff and students. We know that social workers bring to bear a macro experience that's unique from school counselors and school psychologists. They understand systems, processes, and operations, the social ecological model, the relationship between the whole and the sum, right? And so the first thing I really needed to know about school social work that I want to put out to our school social workers is macro matters. School social workers come with a unique skill set, and it's time to let that skill set fly. right? Let people know that you understand how systems and processes work. Understand how school level approaches influence individual level outcomes. Get on those SEL teams, as Mr. Capiello was saying, the PBIS teams, the types of things that allow school-wide effort. And let me just take a second to recognize, I realize that some of our school social workers are only evaluated by how many IEP cases they do. They're only evaluated by the number of triennials or social histories complete. So come talk to me, we're gonna work to change that. We're gonna make sure that our school social workers are evaluated through all that they support in their school, not just the micro, but the macro, because the first thing I learned about school social work is that macro matters. That's not all. All right, lesson number 4. All right, we're going to top 5 to number 1. It's the second thing I learned from school social work is from Dr. Lawrence Farmer, and he told me that what happens in the classroom is as important as what happens in the social worker's office. All right, Dr. Farmer, he did his degree over at the University of Pittsburgh, and he was a school social worker actually in Florida. And when he was a school social worker, he spent a lot of time getting into the classrooms, pushing into the classrooms, to make sure that students could generalize what they've learned in counseling, in therapy, in therapeutic sessions to the classroom environment, particularly under conditions of emotionality, right? We talk about activating social and emotional skills under conditions of stress, right? So the second thing I learned here, lesson number 4, is that we got to make sure our school social workers recognize the power they play in helping students activate these social emotional skills under conditions of stress and emotionality. And to do that, we got to get out of the office and into the classroom. It's not just about students. We know that when school social workers are in the classroom, teachers are more supported and interacting with students in ways that activate those social emotional skills and help them be successful, right? And again, I recognize that the schedule is punishing. I know those 30-minute blocks don't make it conducive to get out of the classroom and out of the office and into the classroom, but it matters. It matters when social workers are in the classroom and students see that they have support systems in those spaces. It matters when students recognize that the skills that they were learning in counseling are skills they can activate in classroom. It matters when teachers see the way that students are interacting with the social worker can be ways that teachers interact with students. So lesson number 4, what happens in the classroom is as important as what happens in the social worker's office. And that is something that I learned from Dr. Lawrence Farmer. Let's see lesson number 3. Okay, make impact, not martyrs. This is about 3 years ago. I was at Fordham School of Social Service. There was a conversation on school social work, and I was on the panel that Dr. Farmer was moderating. And we had this amazing story of this social worker. And she said, look, I cared so much about this student that my principal asked me to leave, and I left the school social work field. And everybody was like, oh my God, you were so passionate. You really held it down. And then realized, right, that if we really want to make impact, we can't be martyrs. We got to think about the skills that we have developed in the school social work context, motivational interviewing, the theory of planned behavior, not just for things to change how students interact with themselves and others, but also to influence our administrators so they recognize our skills. The values of school social workers are not realized when we're martyrs, right? The values have to be realized when we influence others to incorporate our core perspectives and support our change and outcomes for kids. So becoming a martyr for your cause really helps kids. Changing minds do. So get in there, change minds. If your schedule is organized in ways that only evaluate your micro work, let's get it out there so it does more. If your principal doesn't appreciate the work that you're doing on the day-to-day basis, let's get out there and understand how we can work on attendance. Let's go out there and influence systems and structures. Let's make sure we're making impact, not martyrs. Lesson number 2, be strength-based. All right, we gotta not just talk about it, we gotta be about it. I love school social workers. I hang out with them all the time, and we always talk about we are strength-based, but then I also hear that students lack SEL skills. Well, how can we be a strength-based organization or field when I hear things like students lack SEL skills, parents lack parenting skills, schools lack belief in young people, principals lack the belief in kids, right? We don't lack anything. When we talk about SEL skills, there are challenges in activating skills under the conditions of stress, right? And they benefit from practice and supportive contexts. But remember, SEL skills are like abs. This comes from our director of SEL now, Brennan Frame. He says, we all have them. Some of us just need more effort to show them to the world, okay? We all have SEL skills. We all have a belief in kids. We all have a belief in the power of kids. Sometimes they just get covered up with cynicism, stress, and the challenges of the day-to-day work. But in the social work context, we got to believe in people's abilities, and we got to lead from the front and be strength-based, not just in our language and what we can do. Here's a quote from Neil Postman, bottom left-hand side. It says, language does much more than construct concepts about the events and things in the world. It tells us the concepts we ought to construct, right? When we use language that reflects the idea that these things are in all of us and we just need to pull them out, then our teachers, our principals, and our students will believe the same. Use strength-based language, be strength-based, not just talk about it, be about it. Lesson number 5. Understand the social ecological model, okay? So again, hanging out with Dr. Farmer, one of the things I really understood is that the training of social workers really connects the classroom to the community, to the students, to the parents, all right? That is something unique that school social workers bring to bear on solving problems in the context of schools. Here we say that students are nested in classrooms, that are nested in schools, that are nested in communities. We need to help our students solve problems in all 3 contexts and help our adults activate those skills as well. When we have prepared them to solve problems, we help them to contribute to society. So this is how I like to think about this. We talk about college career readiness. I want to talk to you about college career community readiness. Right? Our students need to be prepared to enter college if that's their path. They need to be prepared to enter career if that's their path. But we know that they will enter community. We know that they will enter the world. And how do we ensure that we have the skills and dispositions ready for our young people to activate so that they enter the community in a way that improves their community and solves for the common good? So college, career, community. Understand and apply the social ecological model from Brockenbender, not just as a thing that we've learned in social work school, but as a thing that orients the type of supports and organizations in our school. And we've got a bonus lesson. All right, last thing I learned from Dr. Lawrence Farmer is be a beacon of hope, light the way, all right? How we are in our schools will motivate people to be the same. If we are the beacon of hope, if we display the social and emotional competencies that we talk about, if we walk the walk and talk about strength-based supports, people will start to believe in who we are and what we do. So we got to light the way, not just what we say, but who we are. We got to call people in instead of calling people out, right? We got to invite people to be part of this problem-solving methodology. We got to make sure that everybody knows the importance of caring about kids. Let's call people in. Let's take our values in the social work space and incorporate that in the larger educational space to ensure that all students graduate college, career, and community ready. Closing idea comes from Lily Tomlin. She's an actress, and she said, I always wondered why somebody doesn't do something about that. And then I realized I was somebody, all right? We've been trained to make a difference in the world. It's time for us to do exactly what we were trained to do. Happy Social Work Week, School Social Work Week. I'm very appreciative of you guys coming. If you haven't signed up for SEL Day, I got to make a quick plug. Please do so. SEL Day is coming on March 26th, 20 days away. Sponsored by the Urban Assembly, SEL for US. Take a time to show, promote, support SEL. Make sure your schools know about SEL. The theme this year is building bonds, reimagining communities. Take that macro skill and put it to work. Thank you very much. David Adams, CEO of the Urban Assembly. I appreciate so much, Natasha, the opportunity to be here. Thank you to our social workers. Thank you to Dr. Lawrence Farmer for all his inspiration to me. And thanks to folks like Mike Capiello who do this every single day.
Wonderful. And just before you go, Michael, because I know some folks wonder if they could do the SEL Day, stuff like that. So what would you need from us? Like I shared with them a little bit before you spoke. I definitely would like to pull us together on this, support folks in whatever is necessary. So what are some things, really quickly, that you think they might need? But also at this time, if you need to run to the potty or need a bio break, this is the bio break because Hannah is going to come on. So if you need to do that, feel free. You might not get one that says this is the time to do it. We're going to let you take that decision on your own. So while that's happening, David, could you share with us, like, what are the steps? They just go on the site, they just sign their school up, or how could I support also to help each person on this list?
Great question, Natasha. All right, so selday.org, go on the site, just like you said. You sign up either as an individual, or as a school, and then you're gonna make a decision. How are you gonna celebrate social and emotional learning in your community? Are you gonna plan an activity for your kids? Are you gonna write a column in your newspaper? Are you going to invite an elected official to come see what SEL looks like? When we're doing work with parents, how are families gonna be included? There are all sorts of things that you can do. There are toolkits there. We got the video. Thanks, Natasha. We have badges. So when you sign up and you do these things, showcase, promote, advocate, support, you can get a badge. We can recognize you on the site. I was the #1 SEL Day badger, but then somebody came out there and they beat me by like 9 badges. But I got to get back into that. I will get back into that and making sure that I'm on top of that game. The moral of the story here is that this is an opportunity to celebrate those who produce young people who build communities, right? And that's social workers. So get out there, you can list events, you can become a partner, and learn about what you can do to support SEL Day through selday.org.
Wonderful. So y'all just know that I will be reaching out to those who want to be connected. There's this form, and I'll hash it out with my team, talk to Miss Rhonda, Lisa, my dad, and just figure out how I could help you. Because even if you're like, hey, I need help with an asset, or could we get on, I'm here for it. And Michael, if I don't stop calling you Michael, you're never gonna come again. And David, just know that I'm gonna be involved, okay?
Not a problem. You know why? It's because Mike and I work very closely together. So you're just getting their values confused because we got very similar values. So that I don't take that as offense, as a compliment. Best compliment I had all day.
Thank you.